This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, Charles Kirkland and I return virtually once again to talk movies, to talk entertainment. And we really did not get an opportunity to talk about or to recap the Toronto International Film Fest. So we're going to do a little of that today with a couple of lists that we have. We'll have all that and more on the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go.
Experience life through the eyes of a true film addict. Keeping it real with Film Gordon.
Keeping it real. Keeping it real with Phil Lord. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real with Phil Lord. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real.
All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon, and I am joined by Charles Kirkland Jr. Charles, what's going on with you today, man?
Wow, I don't know. It's weird because uh, um, I want
Had
to
nothing prepared,
celebrate the
didn't you?
fact that I want to celebrate the fact that my football team is in first place in the NFC East for the
Wow,
first time and probably the last time of the season. So
wow,
it's just a weird place I'm in right now.
wow. All right, well, welcome to the show, man. It has indeed been a very long and strange week, filled with loss. Last week we talked about the loss of James Earl Jones and Frankie Beverly. This week we opened the show with Tito Jackson. The Jackson that we now find out, Charles, was the one that's literally behind the formation of them as a group. His blatant disobedience, where he played his father's guitar when he was commanded not to, and he did it for several months until he broke a string. And his mother knew he was playing the guitar and couldn't protect him from that butt whooping that he got. But after the butt whooping, his father, the infamous Joe Jackson, gives him the guitar and says, "Show me what you learned." And when he listened to him play, he was like, "Yo, you as good as I am. Keep on playing. Learn all these songs on the radio." And hit a group called the Jackson Five was born, and this is probably like in the early to mid 60s. And by 1970, man, I mean 69, 70, they had a deal, man. First on Steeltown Records, later on Motown Records, and the rest they say is history. Charles Kirkland, what were your initial impressions when you learned about the passing of Tito Jackson?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, or I have roots in Detroit and no Motown, but I was aware of Tito Jackson's influence upon the Jackson Five and how he was not only the one that was responsible for starting the group, but he was also the one that kept the group together. A lot of things that were going on. He was an ipso facto manager of the group while they were on tour and things. When Joe wasn't around, Joe left him in charge. So
All right. Well, I mean,
yeah,
Tito, as we know, man, for several years or decades, man, had been the butt of all of these jokes because everybody was talking about there's Michael. Then there's to degrade somebody, you just call him Tito. Like there was maybe it was just the name Tito that was different. Like, man, I'm Michael, you Tito. So it was never you, Michael. I'm Michael and you Jermaine or Marlon or Jackie or any of the other Jacksons. It was always Tito. I think it was the name Charles more so than anything else with Tito.
that and Eddie Murphy. I think Eddie Murphy cracked a joke using Tito. Well, it's a long
Tito,
time
give me some
ago.
tissue.
Tito, give me some tissue.
Hey man, but from what I understand, man, it's funny because I've been watching tributes to Tito over the last several days, and I think Latoya wrote a wonderful tribute, and also included some video and pictures. And I think some other family members included some video of Tito in studio, playing with his band and doing his thing. 70 years old, man. The first thing I thought of, Charles, when I heard the story, is that in a alternate reality, if Michael Jackson had lived, this would literally have been the first Jackson of the Jackson 5 to go down. And I was like, wow. So it makes me think, and it made me sad for a couple of hours because I thought about, we watched Frankie Beverly live to 77. I'm trying to think of other artists that we've watched live full lives, but many times, man, we see these stories where we talk about Michael Jackson, we talk about Prince, we talk about losing Luther Vandross at 54, we talk about Eddie Levert. I mean, not Gerald Levert. I apologize. Eddie Levert is very much alive, right? So I don't want to scare anybody. But Maurice White got to live his life. It's interesting, man, when you think through, like we talk about Whitney Houston, who died young. It's interesting, man, in thinking about our lives and then these other individuals in pop culture and how their music and their journeys and their stories are tied to our stories because we're all one community, kind of like living, loving, enjoying, taking in everything. Um, but anything on that, Charles? Because sometimes I try to go into a deep hole, man. Instead of getting depressed, I just kind of think through stuff and
Well,
logically.
the all it's always been said that you burn the candle at both ends, it burns quicker. So, these guys are you're talking about these superstars were great lights, and so sometimes those lights don't last very long. So yeah, it's a sad thing, but they sometimes it's better to leave early, I think, because as far as the legacy of your music, the things that you leave behind are more relevant. I mean, if you think about what would Tupac be doing now, or what would Bob Marley be doing now, what would his sound be like? And it would just be, it wouldn't be the same, if they were still around. So, I mean, because you got examples like Madonna and the Rolling Stones. I mean, their sounds are totally different. They're not as cutting edge as they used to be, and not as popular as they used to be. So, it could there's something to be said for going out on top.
Well, I will take that and I will come back and counter with LL Cool J. We talked about this, put out a new album last week called The Force, right? And I didn't think about it at the time, but LL was everywhere promoting this album, whether it was television, radio, print, web, everything. This is his 40th anniversary in hip hop. 40 years, man. LL Cool J is 56 years old. LL
Yeah,
Cool J is younger than I am and literally about your age, and he's got 40 years in hip hop. And when you talk about music and styles evolving and changing, Charles, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to listen to the album. I have about 3 or 4 times. It's literally gonna be Grammy nominated. It's one of the best hip hop albums of the year. And it's funny, I'll just say as an aside, because I know we started out talking about Tito Jackson, but it is funny that in at least in hip hop, I can't speak for R&B or any other music form, but hip hop, it seems that all of the folks who were popular in the 80s and the 90s are still out there putting out music. I'm not even saying they're trying to keep the genre alive, but we've had LL just putting out a new album that he did with Q-Tip, right? A couple
yeah.
of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, we had Pete Rock and Common put an album out. We've already talked about over the last several months, Nas and Hit Boy. So there are all these folks that are putting out new music. Matter of fact, you know who else has new music out, Charles?
MC Light.
Light. I listened to MC Light's. I'm not gonna say album, but I listened to a couple of the singles off of her album. I applaud these folks, man, because these folks, it's funny. I think Charles and I were talking about this a couple of days ago, And you have people like Andre 3000, who's like not even 50 yet, going, I ain't got nothing else to say, so I'm gonna pick up this flute. And I'm like, and even LL was like, bro, put that flute down, man. There's plenty to say. If you ain't got nothing to say, write about that. Right? Put something out. I mean, no disrespect to all my is it pronounced flautists?
Yeah.
My
Yes. Yes.
flautists, brothers and sisters. Andre 3000 is one of the best lyricists in hip hop, man. Go back to doing what you do. And I understand that you may need to be inspired, Charles. It might not be now. He might sit around for a couple of years and then wake up with some bars one day and go, I got to get back in the studio. Call up Big Boy. We got to put this Outcast thing back together.
Oh,
Ah.
yeah, I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Yeah, again, man. But I'm just saying, man, that it is refreshing to me to not say that you're wrong, but to counter and say that there's still folks out here, man, who are putting out music at a very high level, and they're doing it 30 and 40 years after they debuted, man. So we don't know what Biggie or Tupac or Marley. Bob Marley passed away at the tender age of 36. Bob Marley could have had so much more life and music ahead of him. And I say that for people like Jimi Hendrix and, Otis Redding. There's so many, Marvin Gaye. I mean, everybody has something to say, man. And we as a public, we rely on these artists, man, to kind of help us, help give us solace in moments, give us music that is about love. Give us music that's about revolution and politics. Give us music to open up our minds and help us think, man. That's the role of an artist, man. So I miss that, man. But Tito Jackson was a part of what I call the first family, the Black royal family, the Jacksons. And while he's not going to ever be thought of and as acclaimed as his sister Janet or his brother Michael, Tito was a part of the collective that raised up a whole bunch of kids in the 70s, bro. Raised up a whole bunch of kids that loved the Jackson Five.
Or Jermaine.
I'm sorry, I forgot about Jermaine, man. Jermaine. So what is it? Jackie, Jermaine, Tito, Marlon, and Michael. Right? Did I leave anybody out? And then there's Reby, Janet,
Latoya.
Latoya. Did I leave anybody out? I think that's the eight.
I think that's it. Eight.
Yeah,
Eight of them.
Jacksons. Yeah. So, prayers up to the Jackson family. I know it can't be easy. You lost Michael, you lost Tito. Yeah, it's rough, man. That's rough stuff, man. But
yeah, yeah.
All right, Charles, any last moments, man, before we move on?
No, I think that's pretty much it for that subject. I mean,
All right.
it seems like every week we're going to be doing somebody. So,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, quarter after the hour for our show right now. And a couple of weeks ago, Charles, actually it was last week, we were in Toronto, for the Toronto International Film Fest. I think we saw a total of 51 films between the both of us. And I think we talked a little on the show that is last week about some of our experiences at TIFF. So today, I just want to jump in, and we've got a couple of lists that I think we need to hit. And I wanted to do our top 10 performances from the Toronto International Film Fest, and then I wanted to discuss our top 10 films. And Charles, do you still have your list available of both?
I do.
All right, so let's jump right in, man. So our top 10, and I'm not sure if we should just go back and forth because we may have some of the same people. So I will let you lead off. Give me in inverse order your top 10 performances. And the way I did it, Charles, is I had the name of the actor and then the film. So
Okay. At number 10, Selena Gomez, who was in Emilia Perez.
okay, good choice. All right.
So yeah, a very emotional performance. I think might have been neglected if anybody would think about it, but she was very powerful in the film as a grieving wife and mother who's trying to move on. She did a lot with the role that she had in that film. I was impressed with her,
All right.
and it was her first time acting in Spanish, so I mean it was interesting for her.
All right. So what's number nine?
I thought we were going back and forth. You're not gonna give me your number
All right,
10?
I'll give you my number 10, man. You want to go back and forth, man. At number 10 for me, man, was Ryan Destiny from The Fire Inside. And of course, The Fire Inside, we'll talk a little bit more about, but this is based on the Clarissa Shields story, first woman to win two gold medals in the, actually, let me rephrase that. She did win two, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The matter of fact, the only boxer to
The
ever
only,
win.
only woman American to win two gold medals, right? So, as a boxer,
Right.
So Ryan Destiny, I'm sure she's done something, and I apologize because I wasn't prepared because Charles caught me off guard. We're not going back and forth, but Ryan Destiny in this film, I thought gave a really good performance, and in one of the three films that I think we talked about last week that we had these similarities. So Ryan Destiny ended up at number 10 for me. Of course, for The Fire Inside, which comes out in theaters much later this year, I think around Christmas time. So what's your number nine, Charles?
Uh, my number nine, and this is kind of interesting, but I had Salma Hayek for Without Blood, which is Angelina
Nice.
Jolie's new movie. She's very intense in this film, and um, you can't take your eyes off of her. And that's one of the things that makes I say Without Blood is just a very beautiful movie to watch, as well as suspenseful, and she does a wonderful job in this film.
Very nice. Now, coming in at number nine for me is somebody that people know, but I don't think you've seen him do this before. As a person who opens the door and invites two young missionaries into his house so they can spread the word about Jesus Christ, Latter Day of Saints, Hugh Grant in The Heretic is absolutely mesmerizing in this film. What, did I say something wrong, Charles? You're making a face.
You put him at number nine?
Put him at number nine, man. So I mean, can we get to the rest of my list, man? There's a reason
Okay,
he's at
I'm
number
just
nine, man.
hey, all right, all right.
So Hugh Grant, who's early in his life did a lot of romantic comedies and did a lot of stuff. He is I'm not gonna say he's terrifying in this film, but he is very, would unhinged be a good word? Mentally unhinged?
I don't think he
I
was
don't know.
mentally unhinged.
Unhinged might be the word. But he plays so against type. Like you're not expecting if Hugh Grant lets you in the house that the shenanigans that occur in The Heretic will go down. But I guess if the film is called The Heretic, you probably understand that something bad is going to happen. So that's my number nine, Charles. Who do you have at number eight?
Well, for me, I had Ryan Destiny at number eight for me because
Okay.
it's a great performance. And also she learns to box in this film and she does an incredible job of boxing. And they say it's movie boxing, but Clarissa Shields was at the premiere and she's like, yeah, that girl had put in some work. So yeah, I was impressed.
You had her at number eight? No, I'm teasing you, man. All right. So my number eight was a film I saw early on in the festival. Another film, ironically, about a boxer who is just trying to make weight, man. He's been out the game for 10 years. He's addicted to the fight game. And Orlando Bloom in The Cut, which is a boxing film. Well, let me rephrase that. It's a film about a boxer, but there's no boxing in the film. It's all about the psychological torture that his trainer, who I literally messed up because the only reason why I didn't put John Turturro on my list is because I didn't put any two people from one film on the list. But John Turturro, I honestly believe that if they run a campaign for him, he can get some Oscar consideration for the role that he played in this film. I know Orlando Bloom was the recipient of all that suffering, but John Turturro's character is like some kind of evil in this movie, man. So in the cut. So again, another movie that's coming out later this year. We will be talking about it a little bit more. So Charles, what did you have at number seven?
Number seven for me was Tom Hiddleston. And I never told you that I saw this film, but I saw it on the last day as I was the morning that I was leaving TIFF. The film is called The Life of Chuck, and it's an adaptation of a Stephen King novel, and more along the lines of the Green Mile than it is any of his horror stuff. And it's a really interesting movie. I can't remember what was the movie that uh, 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 Jim Carrey played the guy who everybody was watching him.
Oh, oh God, man, I'm looking at the ad right
All
now.
I can think of is good afternoon, good evening, and good night. But anyway, this
Yeah,
story is kind of the
Truman
same,
Story.
right? And so this story is kind of the same where everyone seems to be in on what's happening with Chuck, and it's a real interesting story. Very, very inspirational. And Tom Hiddleston is in the film, and his grandfather is played by Mark Hamill, who gets him started on the world of being an accountant. And now he's this guy, accountant, that's getting ready to retire, and everyone is like thankful to him for what he's done, and it's just an amazing movie.
Life of Chuck. All right, I just thought you picked that because it had Chuck in the title.
You know what? It was because it had Chuck in the title and it was Stephen King, and I saw it and I really loved it, and it ended up winning the People's Choice Award at TIFF.
Nice, nice. All right, so this is interesting. Number seven. I'm not going to do a breakdown because we will review this film later in the show. But I had Demi Moore for the substance, and we'll talk about that in the review, and you'll hear why she's number seven when you hear my review a little later on. So, what did you have at number six, Charles?
At number six for me, I had Bobby Cannavale, who stars as the father in a movie called Unstoppable, which starred Jarrell Jerome and Jennifer Lopez. Story about a guy who has one leg and wants to be a wrestler, and Bobby Cannavale plays his father, who just is a despicable man. And I you know
Charles, say it. He's a horrible human being.
is a horrible human being, and on many fronts. And I think it takes a lot of strength to play a character that evil. And so, yeah, I gave him credit for that.
That's very interesting, man. Because again, my rule of not taking any two people from one movie, but my number six was Alicia Vikander, or Vikan. I keep calling her
You
Vikander.
said it right, Vikander.
Yeah, so and a film called The Assessment. And of course, The Assessment is a story of in the future, kind of like this alternate reality where the world is overcrowded. And now, in order to keep that down in the future, every time families want to have a child, an assessor comes to your house and must spend a week evaluating you. And at the same time as you're being evaluated as parents, the assessor also pretends to do things that a child would do. So it is a very interesting story. WandaVision's Elizabeth Olsen and Alicia Vikander are both in this film, and I found the film quite moving. But Vikander's performance, man, is pretty spot on and really, really interesting in this film. All right, Charles. Now we get into the top five. Who do you have?
My number five for me is Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who's we know
Mm.
from lots of things, and especially Secrets and Lies that she did with Mike Lee. And now she's back with a movie called Hard Truths.
Hmm.
And she plays this really grumpy, curmudgeonly woman who just has a negative aspect on everybody and everything in the world, and she's just she speaks in venomous bile. That's just it's just she's just an angry, angry woman. And at the beginning of the film, it's kind of like watching Archie Bunker, and you're laughing at her because she's just so crazy and evil and wrong. But then as the movie proceeds on, you start to see the pain that is behind all of it. And I think John Baptiste is wonderful in this performance.
Got you. All right, and my number five, I'll take your Bobby Cannavale earlier at number seven and raise you with Jarrell Jerome from Unstoppable, who plays the title, I mean the main character, who is the one-leg wrestler who overcomes all the odds and becomes a champion. Jarrell Jerome, you've seen him in Moonlight, you've seen him in When They See Us. This
Well,
brother,
some
man,
of us have.
well, yeah, I didn't because I didn't see When They See Us, but I'm saying you notice I said you may have seen
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah.
But he's putting together quite the filmography, man. And his performance in this film, I think Unstoppable either comes out in either late October, early November. But
Yeah.
we'll talk again. I keep preferencing some of these films that are coming up. We're gonna talk more about them when those films are getting released. All right, so now we down to the final four. Chuck, who's at number four?
Carla Sofia Gascon, who plays Amelia Perez
You
in
had her at
Amelia
number
Perez.
four?
Yes, I did. She
Ah,
plays a dual role in this movie. Kind of. She plays the one person, but in two forms. So I don't know if I want to explain any more than that. But a fantastic performance by her. And yeah, I put her at number four.
all right. And I put Florence Pugh at number four for a film called We Live in Time, which is this beautifully shot film about a relationship with two people. And God, I don't want to say too much more because when this movie comes out, I'm gonna really go bananas crazy trying to analyze it and talk about it. But the one aspect that I will add with this performance, and she stars opposite Andrew Garfield in the film, is that the film is a love story that is unlike any you've seen because it doesn't happen in chronological order, front or back, but it feels like a series of individual vignettes of their lives that are all laid out like a cinematic collage. And at the end, by the end, you really understand not just they live in time, but they love in time and they love passionately in time. So I just thought Florence Pugh was brilliant. I just thought the whole concept of the film was brilliant, but the chemistry between Pugh and Garfield is very, very winning. And it reminds me, Charles, I'll just say this last thing before I move on to the top three. I can't remember the movie with God, the story about the British kid who falls in love with the American woman, and he can move back in time by going in his closet, closing his fist up. Um, but that
Um,
was yeah. But he can only move back and forth in time in his own life to a certain extent as long as those people are alive. So I love these films that sort of play with time, but they have rules attached to them that either make sense or don't make sense. But We Live in Time, which I saw at Toronto, is absolutely brilliant. And Florence Pugh is a huge reason why. All right, the treacherous three, Charles. What you got?
all right. We've talked about this guy on our show before in not so glowing terms, but I had an opportunity to talk with him at Sunday at TIFF.
I know where we're
And
going with this one.
and so my number three is John David Washington for the piano lesson.
Hmm.
The man is electric in this role. This is a role that he was born to play. He perfected it. Well, I won't say he perfected it. He portrayed it on Broadway, and now he had an opportunity to do it on screen. And this is a John David Washington you haven't seen before in any of his films. I think he's animated. He life lively, and he's just incredible in this film. So I put him in at number three.
All right, and number three for me is Carlos Sofia Gascon. And
What?
I will try to explain this in the way that Charles didn't explain. Without giving out too much, even though the story does the trailer give a lot of the details away?
No,
Okay, the
no.
trailer didn't give it away. Okay, well, never mind then. I'll make sure we keep it spoiler free. Carla Sophia Gascon, as Charles says, playing two people in what was the phrase you just said? She's playing in two different forms or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's playing a
So,
citizen, but in a
yeah.
different role
So
ways.
pretty
Yeah.
much what the film is about is there's a cartel leader who kidnaps an attorney played by
Zoe Saldana.
Saldana. And he tells the attorney played by Saldana that I have a proposition for you, but once you hear the proposition, you have to accept it. So if you don't want to take the proposition, don't listen to what I'm about to tell you. So she soldiers on and he reveals what he wants. And Carla Gascon is sort of the heart and soul of like what this story is all about with that reveal. And the performance is so good. I had to ask, like, how many of this? Who? So I just leave it at that without saying any more because I was at the point I was like, who, 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 what happened? Yeah. So really interesting performance that as we get closer to release is I promise you, we will talk a lot about Carla Gascon's performance in Emilia Perez, which I thought was absolutely fantastic.
Netflix in November. We'll be talking about it.
Absolutely. What's number two, Charles?
Number two, now I want you to recognize that I did not repeat any movie on my list, not one. So number two for me was Danielle Deadweiler. And
Ah,
and you may say, oh, the piano lesson, but no, I'm putting her down
40
for her
acres.
performance in 40 Acres.
I
40
know
Acres
40
was
acres, man.
well, you might have known, but everybody else. So yeah, I mean, the performance is as great, and I will say that she is great in the piano lesson, but she is twice as good in 40 Acres. So yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful performance by her, very strong performance. She's motherly, and I don't know. There's so many sides of motherhood that she displays in this film, which is incredible to me. So great film, 40 Acres.
All right, man. My number two, I put this person on it because they weren't just brilliant in one movie, they were brilliant in two. And of course, that is none other than Mr. Ray Fiennes, who made my list because he stars in Conclave and The Return. And The Return, I will just start off by saying he is the old story of quiet down. He plays in the Odyssey. So this is kind of like a piece of the Odyssey. He plays Odysseus, who returns after 10 years fighting in the wars. And of course, if you've read the book and know the story, of course, he shows back up. Everybody assumes he's dead. His wife is under siege because she's waiting for her husband. And Odysseus is laying in the cut getting everything together and strategizing before he makes his return. Hence the name of the film, The Return. So that performance I thought was great. But in Conclave, of course, tells a story of the fight for the papacy after the Pope dies, that all the cardinals converge into the Vatican as they begin the proceedings to figure out who's going to be the next Pope. And the genius thing about the papacy and how they select popes, Charles, is unlike in regular politics where, like a senator, like we have a senator. So like you have senators and congressmen, but some folks can come from outside into our political system and decide like, 45 did in 2016 and decide because he wasn't a member of any of these bodies and he just showed up.
Right.
So, but unlike that in the conclave, the Pope's coming from one of these cardinals. And there's this jockeying that's almost befitting of an American election, even in a character or a couple of candidates. One who, we famously will say, we not going back, trying to take the church back. And then one candidate who's sort of like, I'm the president. I'm the candidate of joy. So all those elements play into it, but at the center of not just the return, but of Conclave is my man Ray Fiennes, who I think is amazing, and somebody's going to put him up for something this year because Conclave is going to get a lot of support. Maybe not so much for the return, but yeah. So he was my number two, man. And watch this, drum roll, coming in at number one.
Well, I didn't get to see either. The reason why we have 50 some movies that the two of us have seen is that there are very few movies that the both of us have seen, and I never saw either one of those movies that Ray Fiennes was in, and which was why he's not on my list at all. But for me, my number one performance was Hugh Grant in Heretic. I mean,
What?
because yes, yes, come on now, you can't tell me. I mean, he plays so against type in this film. I mean, he's usually the lover boy, charming guy. He's charming in this way in this movie, but he's a demented kind of charming in this movie. And you really don't expect this kind of work from Hugh Grant, and that's why I mean, he really expanded his territory by doing this film, and so that's the reason why I put him at number one. All these actors, we've seen them do things that are kind of on these types, but that's why I put him here because this is just not the Hugh Grant that you grew up loving.
Okay, that's good. And I bet I had one bullet in the chamber. Coming in at number one of the most buzzed about movies that was at Toronto was this story of a an exotic dancer. I'll just use that. I've heard the phrase sex worker. She is an exotic dancer who meets.
She's a stripper.
Okay, I didn't. I'm trying to keep it clean. She's an exotic dancer who begins a love affair with the son of a Russian oligarch, and what that means when they get together. And okay, so I don't want to review it, but pretty much, man, they get married and the family is outraged. So they fly over from Russia to make sure that this marriage can be annulled. The film is called Honora, and the woman who is at the center of it is a young lady who I haven't seen her work. I know she's done some stuff. Her name is Mickey Madison. She's fantastic in this film. She is absolutely electric on every frame in this story of this woman that's fighting for this relationship. And we think we know why she's fighting. You be the judge when you watch the film on what her motivations are. But this film is absolutely fantastic. She's fantastic. And that's my top 10 list. So, Charles, start from the beginning and go down. Give everybody your top 10 one more time, starting with Mr. Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant at number one, Danielle Deadwyler at number two, John David Washington, Carla Sophia Gascon, Marianne Jean Baptiste, Bobby Cannavale, Tom Hiddleston, Ryan Destiny, Salma Hayek, and Selena Gomez.
All right, I want you to know that Charles didn't give you any films there, so I'm going to do it the correct way for my list.
Well, shoot, if they've been watching the show, they heard the movies.
All right, Mickey Madison from Honora, Ray Fiennes for both Conclave and The Return, Carla Sophia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Florence Pugh, We Live in Time, Jarrell Jerome, Unstoppable, Alicia Vikander for The Assessment, Demi Moore, The Substance, Orlando Bloom, The Cut, Hugh Grant for Heretic, and finally Ryan Destiny for The Fire Inside. I think we only had like two of the same people, right?
Three people on our that we shared on our list.
All right, so now it's time for us to go down our top 10 list, and I'm gonna do this a little differently because Charles just be sucking up air and stuff. So we're gonna speed this process up. All right, my top 10 list, and in inverse order, and I'm just gonna give you the whole list, man. Coming in at number 10 is a story of Native Americans who are playing basketball and overcoming odds and alcoholism and everything else. That film is called Res Ball. I can tell from Charles's expression, he has this movie much higher, but you didn't have to. Wow. Wow. All right. So that was number 10. Coming in at number 9, you heard me talk about Alicia Vikander, the story in the future where an assessor comes in to give you your chances on whether you get a baby or not. The assessment was number 9. Coming in at number 8, Charles Kirkland told me to go see this movie. It reminded us of a movie we saw last year, but not enough edge, but it was still great nonetheless. The Executioner. What is it? What are they called? The
The
major
major, they were major crimes unit. Yeah.
major crimes unit, boy. You need to see the Executioner. Don't take my word for it. Just watch it. Coming in at number 7, Odysseus is hanging out as all hell's breaking loose, plotting the return. Coming in at number 6, Jarrell Jerome is unstoppable. And I like that movie a lot, and I put that there. My top 5, We Live in Time, which you've heard me talk about earlier. Amelia Perez came in at number 4. The film that warmed my heart that I thought was one of my favorites of the festival, Saturday Night, the story of the very first episode of Saturday Night Live. Brilliant, brilliant film. Coming in at number 2, of course, is Conclave, and number 1 is Honora for me. Charles.
Wow. Okay. We got 2 similarities, but I'll go through my list. At number 10 for me, I put 40 Acres, which is a fantastic movie. We've already talked about. At number 9, I put a film that you didn't see, and I don't think we've talked about, is a film called K-Pops. It stars Anderson .Paak and his son. It's that same winning formula that you've seen in The Fire Inside, Unstoppable, Res Ball, all of those things about a loser and the guy comes along and helps the loser to become a winner, and but it's all about a K-pop show in Korea, and Anderson .Paak is flown out to Korea to be a drummer on the show, and he finds his son is one of the contestants, and he helps him to become successful in the thing. So I'm sucking up air. Anyway, at number 8, the Executioner, just like you have it.
Oh,
But
nice.
number 7 for me was The Shadow Strays, which I told you about, which is a Netflix movie, which it goes even further than the Executioner.
Hmm.
And yeah. At number 6, I have The Life of Chuck, which I enjoyed immensely. Number 5 is Saturday Night, and I think that's the last film that we have together, because number 4 for me was Piece by Piece, which is the Lego movie story of Pharrell Williams, and fantastic. I think it's going to be documentary of the year and animated feature of the year. Number 3 is Without Blood, Angelina Jolie's movie. Number 2 is Amelia Perez. I don't know how that didn't make your list at all. But and number 1 is
Amelia Perez was number 4 for me.
Oh, it was. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have missed that. I was zoned out when you said it. But Amelia Perez is number 2, and The Piano Lesson is number 1.
All right, so let me go back through this list one more time, man. At number 1, I had Honora, followed by Conclave, Saturday Night, Amelia Perez, We Live in Time. Number 6 was Unstoppable. Number 7, The Return. The Executioner at number 8, The Assessment at number 9, and the film that didn't even crack Charles' list, Res Ball at number 10. Charles was like, oh. So what's your list one more time?
Yeah, as you may notice that neither Unstoppable, The Fire Inside, or Res Ball made my top 10. So sorry. But anyway, my top 10 again is you want me top to bottom?
Yeah, top to bottom again. Yeah, top to bottom again.
Top to bottom is The Piano Lesson, the latest August Wilson adaptation. Amelia Perez on Netflix. Without Blood, Piece by Piece, Saturday Night, The Life of Chuck, The Shadow Strays, the Executioner, K-Pops, and 40 Acres.
All righty. So we'll have more information. You can just go to the site, and we have a micro site that has all of the movies. We'll have more reviews that we'll be updating between now and the end of the year. And you can go in and just look at all the list of films that we've discussed and talked about. So, all right, Charles, now it's time for movie reviews. And this is my chance to show off because Charles has seen no movies this week. And I'll just be trying to get Charles to either laugh, go, or something over the course of these next 15 minutes, man. So, Charles, you ready?
I'm ready when you are.
All right. We have two movies to review this week. Of course, we talked about Demi Moore and The Substance. So that's coming up later. But we're going to start with the latest series, new series from Marvel Television. And of course, that is called Agatha All Along, which is a spinoff of the very first Disney Marvel Television. And I'm talking about in the modern era, Charles, like the first one in the modern era that I think this came
Disney
out.
Plus.
Disney Plus, right, around the pandemic, where it was a spinoff from WandaVision. And it is intended to be the 11th television series in the MCU produced by Marvel Studio via its television division. And of course, Catherine Hahn reprises her role as Agatha Harkness from WandaVision. She's joined by Joe Locke, Sashir Zamata from Saturday Night Live, if you remember her, Ali An, Maria Dizel, Paul Alstein, and a bunch of other folks, including Patti LuPone and Aubrey Plaza. So Charles, they sent out 4 episodes, and I heard your caution in the back of my ear that if you watch all 4 of these, you're gonna have to wait a month for a new episode. So after hearing that, I watched 3. I didn't watch the 4th one yet because I don't want to wait that long. But you're absolutely right. This happens all the time where they'll give us like all the episodes way in advance, and you got to wait until you can kind of finish the season off. So I don't know how many episodes are in this season. It might be 6. I'm guessing 6 or 8, but whatever it is, I stopped at 3. So if you remember in WandaVision, I think, because I didn't get a chance, Charles, to go back and watch, because every time we're doing these sorts of spinoffs, I try to figure out and identify from going back to watch where we left the character so we know where we're starting, what's our baseline. But I do remember, was she fighting Agnes at the end of WandaVision? Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So this one starts, Charles, wait for it. This one starts that she wakes up and she is a detective showing up on a case. There's been a murder committed and she's a detective who has been suspended, but they're bringing her back to help investigate this crime, as they say, a crime that only she can solve. All right. And when she shows up, of course, there is a body laying there and you don't know who the body is, right? We'll get to that a little later on. But she is living this dead-end life as a burnt-out detective. She gets a familiar face shows up, who's a part of the feds because this crime happened over state lines. And we discover, stop laughing, Charles. We discover that when she goes to the morgue to check out the body, I'm not even going to tell you, you know whose body it is, right? But when she finds out who the body is, then we also discover that the whole life that we've been watching her have is all an illusion. And she is under a spell, and she comes out of the spell, and she is Agatha again, right? But now, along with Agatha, her new charge is that, and she's lost her power because it was taken from her from the Scarlet Witch, and she needs to get her power back. So the only way she can get it back is she's got to put together her own, what's the word I want to use? Her Avengers.
Coven.
No, I was going to say her coven, her dream team coven, because they got to walk the witch's rope. And that literally is as much as I'm going to say, because pretty much that's as much as all I've seen, because I didn't see anything else other than that. But they're walking the witch's row, and there are all sorts of things. It's almost like a scavenger hunt of things they need to do, things they need to chant in order to avoid. I don't even know what these bad people are called because I didn't watch enough of it through the first 3 episodes that they told you who these dark, demented witches are. I don't even know what they're called, Charles. You probably know from me. No, you have no idea. So,
No.
but what I will say about this, just in kind of wrapping it up, is that you and I have done countless shows about how there was quantity over quality for a lot of these Disney Plus shows. And they were churning out so many of them. There were so many that were kind of hit and miss, like a Moon Knight or a She-Hulk and some of these other shows, right? And it seems like in the refocusing is that this show, from what I've seen so far, the first 3 episodes, I was explaining to Charles earlier, it normally, like, and you were saying the same thing, Charles, that they normally give you enough episodes by the time you get to the last episode and you start getting into it, then you got to wait, right? So this one hooked me like halfway through the second episode. I was like, oh, yeah, this is working. I like the tone. I like the humor. I like the writing. I like the direction of what they're doing. Now, in all fairness, Charles, I can't give it a full grade right now because I haven't seen enough of it in order to do that. But I'll just say that I love the direction that Agatha all along is going. And for anybody who's just showing up and doesn't really understand the name, there was a song famously in WandaVision that it was Agatha all
Agatha all
along.
along.
She was the Kevin Fine at all. So I like this show, Charles. I think it's pretty hot. I'm looking forward not just to watching episode 4, because I've already rewatched episodes 1, 2, and 3 2 times each, because I was like, wow, this is good stuff. So yes, this show drops on Disney Plus on, I'm looking for the date right now.
September 18th.
There it is, September 18th. So it's coming out later this week. So you'll be able to check out episode. Now, when they put it on, do they normally put on the first 2 episodes, or you just get one episode?
Well, I was going to clear all that up for you. Yes, this on the 18th, it's a 2 episode premiere, so you're going to be watching the first 2 episodes on the first day. So you're really only 2 weeks ahead. So you'll have this week and next week's shows that you've already seen, and it is scheduled for 9 episodes. So
very nice. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So
it's going to run all the way to the day before Halloween. So,
nice.
it's going to be, yeah.
So I'm only 2 weeks ahead. So, okay, so I can hold off on watching episode 4, which is slated for October the 2nd. So I'm good. I'm good, Charles.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so I will say grade incomplete, because I can't really grade it right now. All right.
Well, give a grade of what you've seen.
A grade of what I've seen, I'd give it a B plus, man. I think it's really good. The first 3 episodes, man, it really pulls you in with the quickness. The Agatha Harkness, Catherine Hahn is really good, and if anybody can carry this spinoff, she's doing an amazing job so far. All right. So up next, Charles, is the story of a fading actress who decides to use a black market drug, a cell replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself, unknowingly giving her horrifying side effects in the substance. And this film premiered at Cannes back in May, also played at Toronto and at TIFF. And let me just say, as a rule, you guys know I don't do horror, right? And it's funny. The only reason I did horror on this film is because I was slated to see it in Toronto. They had it as a part of their Midnight Madness package. I was not staying up to 3 a.m. watching this movie. So I was like, I'll wait until I get back. But the story, as I just laid out, shows Demi Moore as an actress called Elizabeth Sparkle, right? And they go through this whole long extended scene, Charles, at the very beginning of the film, where we see her get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and how over time, what happens with this star before we even meet Elizabeth, right? She is sort of like a Jane Fonda-esque, has a show where she does fitness, sort of like in the 80s, and she's been doing it from the 80s to now. And of course, she's aged tremendously. There's a studio executive of the show, or executive producer, who's just a really not crass, but like a swarmy, like just really bad guy played by Dennis Quaid, man. Like just he's really good in this. And Quaid is not that character, so he's playing against type. So he's looking for the next young thing. He's looking for who's going to be the next Elizabeth Sparkle. And suddenly Sparkle is sort of depressed, living in a high rise, has all the money, has everything that she could want, but she's lonely, Charles. No love, no friends, no relationships. And suddenly one day she gets somebody, she goes to the doctor because she has an accident. And one of the attendees gives her this card for something. If you want to change your life, call this number. And of course, the dummy calls the number, Charles, and suddenly she's subject 503, who is getting the substance. And I could go into much more detail about what it's about, what it becomes. But when they say you get a newer, younger self, you absolutely do. And you also get a whole bunch of other stuff that they don't tell you in the fine print. And I will just say that for the most part of the film, there are rules that are attached, right? And if you don't follow the rules, which don't get followed in this movie, they end up in horrifying effects. And I will just say that I haven't seen a third act with that much blood since Carrie in 1976. It was so much. I told one of my colleagues, does a human body have that much blood in it? The Substance is a really, really, I'm not going to call it a really great film. It is a wonderful character study that I think will spur lots of conversations, post-film conversations. I dug it, man. I thought Demi Moore, she had to get in some great shape. Parental advisory at home if you're trying to go see The Substance. There's a whole lot of nudity and there's a whole lot of blood. So you figure I look, don't say I didn't tell you, because people are always like, well, Tim, you didn't tell. It's a whole lot of nudity, whole lot of blood, whole lot of blood. So I would give The Substance a strong B. Demi Moore, to be 57 years old, from watching that film, she's done some amazing things with her body, because I saw it all. I saw it all. And the film also stars Margaret Qualley as the younger version of Demi Moore. But The Substance, man, is worth your time. I would check it out. All right, Charles, we got about a minute to go, man.
Real quick, let me say this. When we were in Toronto, The Substance has really good PR because they had a whole bunch of those posters posted up on lights around the area saying, if you want, are you unhappy? Let's try The Substance. And they had, you could tear off the number, and the number was the number from the film. So yeah,
Don't try The Substance.
Don't
I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. All right, Charles. So on behalf of my man, Charles Kirkland Jr., I am Tim Gordon. We always tell you, please see something good at the movies this weekend. We gave you reviews for The Substance and for Agatha all along. One, you can stay at home. The other one, you can go out to the theaters. You be the judge. And as always, we tell you, you guys take care. We will see you next week. All right? Peace.